World War II, humanity's darkest nightmare. Historical photos are about to be revealed. Drop a 1 if you're ready to watch this video all the way through with me. In 1942, in Bjelovar, the massacre of Serbs left a deep scar on Balkan memory, a grim reminder of the brutality of ethnic cleansing during the war. Military radios became fragile lifelines between the front and home, and from 1939 to 1945, they often meant the difference between despair and survival. Sherman crews in Normandy cleared paths for Allied forces, a move that reshaped the war's outcome, and it all unfolded on June 6, 1944. The skies over Britain turned into symbols of resilience as the RAF clashed with the Luftwaffe through the summer of 1940 to defend their homeland. In Stalingrad, soldiers turned every house into a fortress, and by late 1942, the city had become the decisive ground for the fate of the Eastern Front. In 1944, armored tanks rolled across Europe's beaches, symbols of mechanized power clearing the way for Allied forces during some of the war's most decisive battles. In 1944, armored tanks rolled across Europe's beaches, symbols of mechanized power clearing the way for Allied forces during some of the war's most decisive battles. In 1944, armored tanks rolled across Europe's beaches, symbols of mechanized power clearing the way for Allied forces during some of the war's most decisive battles. Men in German uniforms reenacted scenes, making memories of World War II from the 1940s resurface vividly, blurring the line between past and present. In Normandy, Sherman crews fought relentlessly, and by the morning of June 6, 1944, every yard gained contributed to a momentum that turned the tide of war. In 1943, inside shattered cities, burning tanks lit up the night, turning the urban battlefield into a haunting testament to the war's capacity for total destruction. If you like this video, drop a 1. Normandy's beaches turned chaotic, and on June 6, 1944, the invasion transformed the shore into Europe's largest battlefield, opening the path toward France's eventual liberation. Anti-aircraft guns roared as shadowy figures stood firm, resisting the Allied air raids with grim determination across German positions in 1944. The Normandy coast, once serene, became a blood-soaked memory of World War II as the summer battles of 1944 rewrote Europe's history. The Normandy coast, once serene, became a blood-soaked memory of World War II as the summer battles of 1944 rewrote Europe's history. From 1942 to 1944, Dodge WC-54. Ambulances crisscrossed battlefields, delivering fragile hope of survival to countless American soldiers wounded in World War II. From 1942 to 1944, Dodge WC-54 ambulances crisscrossed battlefields, delivering fragile hope of survival to countless American soldiers wounded in World War II. The Soviet army struck back fiercely, pushing German forces away from the capital, and that counteroffensive secured Moscow's survival during the brutal winter of 1941. The siege of Leningrad, beginning in September 1941, was not only a battle, but a tragedy that starved hundreds of thousands of civilians to death. Over Moscow's skies, German bombers unleashed relentless raids, and by late 1941, thousands of bombs had rained down, spreading terror across the embattled Soviet capital. In 1943, Tarawa became a brutal proving ground, where in just 3 days, over 6,000 American and Japanese soldiers fell across the blood-soaked beaches. Leave number 1 if you still read this far. In 1943, Tarawa became a brutal proving ground, where in just 3 days, over 6,000 American and Japanese soldiers fell across the blood-soaked beaches. In 1943, Tarawa became a brutal proving ground, where in just 3 days, over 6,000 American and Japanese soldiers fell across the blood-soaked beaches. Hiromichi Matsuda's famous photo, taken on August 9, 1945 in Nagasaki, etched into human history the unforgettable image of atomic destruction. On a pontoon bridge across the Ruhr, an American soldier fell to German mortar fire, and by spring 1945, death shadowed every crossing. In May 1943, in a small Polish town, civilians were publicly hanged simply for risking their lives to aid Jewish neighbors hunted by Nazi forces. An American bomber roared across the skies, and in 1944, missions like these crippled Nazi Germany's war industry and brought devastation deep into its heartland. German General Anton Dossler, convicted for ordering prisoner executions, faced the Allies' harsh justice, standing before a firing squad in Italy in 1945. The Victory Parade in Red Square, held in the summer of 1945, showed Soviet soldiers lowering Nazi banners, an enduring symbol of fascism's final collapse. American POWs were discovered in severe malnutrition, and on September 11, 1945, they stood as living evidence of the Japanese military's brutal war crimes. In 1945, victorious Red Army soldiers returned to Moscow, carrying their nation's pride after crushing the formidable might of Nazi Germany. Soviet soldiers stood before the Brandenburg Gate, and in spring 1945, the image became undeniable proof of the Third Reich's downfall. The International Tribunal at Nuremberg opened a new era of justice as war criminals faced judgment, all unfolding in 1946. Leave 1 if my video is valuable to you. Leave 0 if you feel bad because of misinformation. Jinpei Terravama survived with burns across his body, and in the summer of 1945, his story reflected the unending pain left by the atomic bomb. In 1946, romances between American soldiers and Japanese women revealed another post-war chapter, where love blossomed amid ruins and the weight of cultural prejudice. General Charles de Gaulle walked in pride, and in the summer of 1944, his presence became a symbol of France's rebirth and freedom restored. Trains carried victorious American soldiers home in triumph, returning them to families and peace, all after Europe's liberation in 1945. The Nazi concentration camp, destroyed by British troops on May 21, 1945, exposed horrifying crimes and left a memory that would never fade. In Tokyo, the tribunal tried 28 Japanese war criminals, and in 1947, death sentences and long prison terms closed one of history's darkest chapters. Amid the white snow of Ardennes in 1944, German tanks crawled forward, their final counteroffensive, a desperate black streak across a frozen canvas. In 1943, at Kursk, across scorched steppe, hundreds of tanks clashed in a firestorm, where steel and lives were shattered side by side. In the smoke-choked chaos of Kharkov, May 1942, a tactical blunder cost the Soviets tens of thousands of troops as German forces closed the trap. In January 1945, Allied troops stormed Luzon from Lingayen Gulf, breaking Japanese lines, turning the rolling sea into a battlefield of thunderous artillery. In May 1940, Germany unleashed blitzkrieg through the Ardennes, bypassing the Maginot Line. And France collapsed like sand, barely grasping what had struck. Narva, 1944. Rocked by shellfire, German and Soviet forces wrestled for every muddy meter, blood and steel mixing in a forested, river-torn wasteland. Under a blanket of snow, Moscow froze in December 1941. A fierce Soviet counterattack forced German retreat for hundreds of kilometers, leaving scorched wreckage behind. Berlin, April 1945. Soviet artillery tore the city apart. Every street ablaze, every wall crumbling as the Third Reich took its final breath. February 1943, at Stalingrad, the Red Army surged in a brutal counterattack. The bloodiest battle of World War II crushed Nazi ambitions in Eastern Europe. Through Warsaw's shattered streets in 1939, German soldiers marched with pride. Poland had fallen, marking the start of a brutal conquest across Europe.